Tonight at 10, Boris Johnson accepts an apology from the Health Secretary after pictures emerge of him kissing and embracing a colleague in breach of COVID guidance. Matt Hancock says he's let people down and is very sorry after the images showed him with Gina Coladangelo. Seen here with her, Labour says Mr Hancock should be sacked.
Unfortunately, this saga does seem yet again to indicate that there's one rule for the Conservatives and another rule for everybody else.
There are questions tonight about how Mrs Coladangelo was appointed to the board of the Department of Health. Also tonight.
The court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months. That's 270.
22 and a half years for Derek Chauvin over the killing of George Floyd. Accountability at last, say his supporters and family. 159 people are still unaccounted for after the collapse of an apartment block near Miami Beach.
Burning 27-24, there is Mo Farah.
And did Samoa do enough to make it to next month's Tokyo Olympics?
And coming up in the sport on the BBC News Channel, the build-up is over. The last 16 of the Euros are less than 24 hours away as Wales prepare to play Denmark in Amsterdam.
Good evening. Downing Street says the Prime Minister has accepted his Health Secretary Matt Hancock's apology for breaching social distancing guidelines after the Sun newspaper published images of him and an aide, Gina Coladangelo, kissing and embracing in the Department of Health. In a statement, Mr Hancock said he'd let people down and is very sorry. Boris Johnson now considers the matter closed. But Labour is calling on Mr Hancock to resign. And there are more questions tonight about how Mrs Coladangelo, initially hired by Mr Hancock himself, was then appointed last September to her current position on the board of the Department of Health. With the very latest, here's our Deputy Political Editor, Vicky Young.
He's been telling all of us to stick to COVID rules.
Keep doing your bit. Remember the basics: hands, face, space and fresh air.
But Matt Hancock and his advisor Gina Coladangelo didn't take that advice. The Sun reported this picture of the two of them, who are both married, was taken inside the Department of Health in early May. Government social distancing guidance says in the workplace people should keep 2 metres apart. In a statement, the Health Secretary said, "I accept that I breached the social distancing guidance in these circumstances. I have let people down and am very sorry. I remain focused on working to get the country out of this pandemic and would be grateful for privacy for my family on this personal matter." Mr Hancock and Miss Coladangelo have been close friends since university. During the pandemic, she's accompanied the Health Secretary to meetings in Downing Street and interviews. Speaking to Radio 4 last year, she talked about first meeting him.
We met at the student radio station, Oxygen FM. I read the news and Matt read the sport. I've always joked with him that he did the sport because he wasn't good enough to do the news. But I think it gave him a bit of an early heads up into aggressive questioning from journalists and hacks.
In September, she became a non-executive director on the board of the Department of Health with a salary of £15,000. Downing Street say the appointment followed correct procedure. But Labour's calling for an official investigation into whether the ministerial code of conduct has been broken.
Matt Hancock either needs to resign, or if he's not willing to do that, then the Prime Minister must remove him from his post. This isn't just a question of, yet again, a Conservative MP disobeying those rules and thinking that they only apply to the rest of us. It's a case where we've seen cronyism on cronyism.
This comes after other high-profile breaches of the rules. Dominic Cummings, who used to be Boris Johnson's top advisor, caused outrage when he travelled hundreds of miles during lockdown. And Professor Neil Ferguson, one of the most prominent scientists advising the government, resigned after his married lover visited his home. This was Mr Hancock's reaction at the time.
I don't understand
Sounds speechless.
I am. That doesn't often happen to me. I think that he took the right decision.
You wouldn't have...
To resign, that
yeah,
is.
you wouldn't have fought to keep him.
That's just not possible in these circumstances.
Now, after his indiscretion, there's been support from ministers and Downing Street.
I think the Secretary of State has said everything he needs to say on this. He's apologised, and the Prime Minister is backing his Secretary of State and considers the matter closed.
And so far, the Prime Minister is showing no sign of sacking him.
But Vicky, while Boris Johnson might say the matter is over, he's not in control of events, is he?
No, that's right. I think being health secretary during a pandemic is a tough job, and Matt Hancock has been accused of making plenty of mistakes, but this one is all of his own making. And I think there are two major problems here which undermine his authority and the rest of the government. One is that accusation that the Conservatives like giving jobs to their friends. That's what he's been accused of doing here. And the other is that charge of hypocrisy. Remember when Dominic Cummings broke the rules? Conservative MPs were bombarded with complaints from the public, absolutely furious that it seemed that advisers and ministers thought the rules were for other people and not for them. And on this occasion, of course, this is Matt Hancock, the man who's been telling us almost every day for 16 months to follow the rules. But that episode with Dominic Cummings tells us something about the Prime Minister's approach. Boris Johnson defended him, even though many people said he should sack him. And that's the approach the Prime Minister has taken with other ministers too. So for now, he's saying the matter is closed. Of course, it might not stay that way.
OK, Vicky, thank you. Vicky Young there at Westminster. A judge in the US city of Minneapolis has sentenced the former police officer Derek Chauvin to 22.5 years in jail for the murder of George Floyd. The 46-year-old African-American died in May last year after Chauvin knelt on his neck for more than 9 minutes during an arrest. The lawyer for Mr. Floyd's family says the sentence is historic, bringing America a step closer to healing by delivering accountability. Well, our correspondent Neda Taufik is in Minneapolis, and a warning: her report contains some distressing images.
Your Honor, Keith Ellison, Attorney General, on behalf of the state of Minnesota.
This courtroom has been the scene of powerful testimony. Today, it became a place of closure for the Floyd family. The judge began proceedings by inviting them to speak.
Mr. Blackwell, you may proceed with victim input.
His daughter, Gianna, appeared first on video. At just 7 years old, she is too young and innocent to comprehend fully what happened to her father.
It would be, I miss you and I love you.
His brother, Terrence, struggled to speak as he addressed Derek Chauvin directly.
I wanted to know from the man himself, why? What were you thinking? What was going through your head when you had your knee on my brother's neck? Why when you knew that he posed no threat anymore?
Those are questions that remain unanswered since Derek Chauvin chose not to testify in his defense during his trial. For the first time, the public got a more intimate look into his character from his mother.
It has been difficult for me to hear and read what the media, public, and prosecution team believe Derek to be an aggressive, heartless, and uncaring person. I can tell you that is far from the truth.
And then Derek Chauvin himself spoke.
I want to give my condolences to the Floyd family.
The judge said his decision was not influenced by public opinion or meant to send any messages.
As sentence for count 1, the court commits you to the custody of the Commissioner of Corrections for a period of 270 months.
Hands up right now. Let me see your other hand.
It's rare for the justice system to punish a police officer, and it took an extraordinary series of events to get to this moment. Crucially, his murder was caught on camera in chilling detail. George Floyd was pinned to the ground with Derek Chauvin's knee on his neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. More than 20 times, Mr. Floyd cried out, "I can't breathe."
I can't believe you. I can't believe you.
It traumatized the community and shocked the world, prompting the biggest protest since the civil rights era.
Mr. McMahon, do you need a minute?
The trial was so compelling that the jury delivered a unanimous guilty verdict after just 10 hours of deliberations.
Mom, and get right back in the fight.
This outcome was in no way inevitable. Still, this one sentence of this one disgraced police officer will only do so much to advance racial equality and the struggle of being black in America. This is the longest sentence a police officer has received in the state of Minnesota. And speaking outside of the courthouse following the sentencing, the family said they do feel some measure of accountability. They hope this is a turning point in America because they feel that the activism surrounding this case could mean real change moving forward. And they told those gathered here outside of the courthouse to keep fighting for justice.
Nada, thank you for that. Nada Tawfiq there, live in Minneapolis. The Office for National Statistics estimates more than 150,000 people across the UK contracted COVID-19 in the week to the 19th of June, the highest figure since the easing of lockdown restrictions in April. Public Health England says the Delta variant, first identified in India, now accounts for 95% of all new cases. It comes as the drive to get more people vaccinated is being stepped up this weekend. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, has more.
Walk-in vaccinations and no need to book for all aged 18 and over. That's the attraction at Arsenal's Emirates Stadium and other venues in England from today. What's been billed as a race to the finish by NHS leaders, with the aim of offering all adults a first jab by July the 19th.
In the beginning, there's like the whole rumours, is it safe, what's in the vaccine? But I think the more people get it, the confidence grows.
And also being like Arsenal supporters,
it does help.
You get to see the stadium.
Free tour, why not? If everyone gets it, or at least most of the people, it'll be safer for everyone and we can have a normal life again.
At this site, first doses are being offered to walk-ins. Others are providing the second dose as well to those eligible. And officials monitoring the spread of the virus say it's important to get both doses to get maximum possible protection. The Office for National Statistics survey estimates the number of weekly cases and isn't affected by temporary surge testing. There was an increase from the middle of May, though it's still well short of the peak in January. The ONS says 1 in 440 people in England had the virus last week. In Scotland, it was 1 in 220, in both cases with increases on the previous week. In Wales, with 1 in 830, and Northern Ireland with 1 in 720. The trend was said to be uncertain. High case rates have been seen in some communities of the northwest of England, like Blackburn. They've been driven by the Delta variant first identified in India. But officials and experts argue that vaccines have at least reduced the risk of becoming seriously ill.
It's dominant. It is causing a lot of infections. We've seen infections rising. And we also see, though, on the plus side, that the vaccines are still effective in the face of this variant, both in relation to hospitalisation and also deaths.
Much still depends on testing and tracing. After poor performance, including long waits, the system in England was criticised by the spending watchdog last year. In a new report, there are still said to be pressing challenges, though overall performance against targets has improved. Testing played a part in assessing pilot spectator events like the FA Cup final. A report says no substantial outbreaks were identified, but more research is needed to understand the risks, and further trials, including at Wimbledon, will now take place. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
Well, the latest government figures show there were 18 deaths reported due to COVID in the last 24-hour period, and there were 15,810 new infections. That means, on average, there were 12,930 new cases per day in the last week. More than 221,000 people received a first dose of a vaccine, meaning over 43.8 million people have now had a single jab, 83.3% of adults in the UK. The number of people who've had their second dose in the latest 24-hour period is over 177,000, taking the overall total to more than 32 million. That's 60.9% of adults in the UK. Officials say 159 people are still unaccounted for after the collapse of an apartment building near Miami Beach. 4 deaths have been confirmed, and it's still unclear what caused the collapse. Today, President Biden said his thoughts are with all the families. Well, our correspondent Will Grant is in Miami for us tonight. Over to you, Will.
Clive, the longer this search and rescue goes on, the more harrowing it becomes. The families are doing their very best to hold out hope of good news, but the difficulty is that there is simply no positive updates to be had so far, and they are gradually losing the faith. Just a warning that my report does contain images of the moment of the building's collapse itself.
As the desperate search for survivors at the collapsed apartment block entered its second day, the full gravity of the situation was laid bare. The exact number of those lost in this tragic incident still isn't known, but it's clear this has the potential to be the most deadly building collapse in Florida's history. The awful moment itself happened so fast it took everything, and it is feared everyone with it. 12 stories and entire lives reduced to rubble in seconds. The methodical work of the rescue teams hasn't stopped since then. They say they're still hearing occasional knocks from inside the debris and are following every lead. At one stage trying to enter the spaces between the rubble via the basement. Family members are gathered at a community centre as their unbearable wait for information goes on. Magali Ramsey's mother lived on the 9th floor.
It feels like the world gets to know more information before we get to know information as family members. So, I don't live in the area, so I came here hoping to get information, and I'm still waiting for that.
Her mother, also called Magali, is one of the oldest of those missing. The youngest was Ashani Patel, the 1-year-old daughter of joint British-American citizen Bhavna Patel, who was pregnant, and her husband Vishal, an entire family missing. But the city will keep up the search, the mayor promised.
We will continue search and rescue because we still have hope that we will find people alive. That is exactly why we're continuing, and that is why we're using our dogs and our sonar and our cameras, everything possible to seek places where there may still be people.
As the rescue effort continues, hopes are beginning to fade. For the family members, this initial period has been one of shock and a desperate wait for information. Now, though, many are beginning to face up to the possibility that they may not see their missing loved ones again.
Magali is clinging on to hope for updates about her missing mother, but she's also under no illusions about what she's facing.
The choices you hold on to are either that there's a miracle with God's grace, and He does have lots of miracles in store for us, or God's grace was one that, she didn't feel a thing, and she's in His hands and His arms right now in a good place.
Will Grant, BBC News, Miami.
Let's take a look at some of the day's other top stories now. And 4 men have appeared at the Old Bailey charged with conspiracy to murder the black rights activist Sasha Johnson. The 27-year-old remains in a critical condition in hospital after being shot in the back garden of a house in Peckham in South London last month. Cameron Derriggs and Devontae Brown, who are both 18, Troy Reed, who's 19, and Prince Dixon, who's 25, were all remanded in custody. At least 3 people have died and 6 others have been wounded in the German city of Würzburg after an attack by a man wielding a knife. A 24-year-old Somali man has been arrested. Police say he was known to them and had been receiving psychiatric treatment in recent months. A freak tornado which hit the Czech Republic has killed at least 5 people and injured hundreds of others. Towns and villages were hit by winds of more than 200 miles per hour along the Slovak and Austrian borders. Thousands of homes are reported to have been destroyed. Now, a remarkable scientific discovery has been made in China. Researchers say they found the skull of what they believe is a new species of human, which could be our closest evolutionary relative. If confirmed, Dragon Man, as he's been named, would replace the Neanderthals as our sister species. Our science correspondent, Palab Ghosh, has more details.
Meet the Dragon Man, a perfectly preserved skull found in the Black Dragon River province in northeastern China. He's thought to be a new species of human that lived 146,000 years ago. A 3D scan shows a huge head with a brain that was about the same size as ours, but other features such as a prominent brow ridge suggest something more primitive.
I said, oh my gosh, you can't believe that, So, and it is so well preserved. You can see all the details.
And this is what the researchers think he looked like, stocky and powerfully built. So where does Dragon Man fit into the new human family tree? Well, 7 million years ago, the first human-like creatures emerged. They became progressively more developed until 2 million years ago, our ancient ancestor Homo erectus emerged. That led to our close cousins the Neanderthals and us, and we coexisted a few 100,000 years ago. Dragon Man, it's claimed, is a new species that lived alongside us. Not only that, it's more closely related to us.
I've been studying human evolution, for the last 50 years or so, and this for me is one of the most significant fossils that I have seen and studied in all of that time. And it really gives us a new view of human evolution, because it looks like, on our analyses, this is a sister species to Homo sapiens, our own species.
Some experts believe that the new species might belong to a mysterious branch of humans called the Denisovans. All we know about them is from a handful of human fossils.
We've had indications that they existed, and then they found more in a jaw from Tibet, suggesting that that jaw may have been Denisovans. But now, because this jaw from Tibet and Dragon Man look like each other, now we may actually have the first face of the Denisovans.
These earlier skulls, found in China, have baffled scientists until now. The new human, they say, was the last in line in the evolution of long-lost ancient relatives in Asia that we've only just found out about. Palab Ghosh, BBC News.
Wales's footballers take on Denmark in Amsterdam tomorrow in the first knockout game of Euro 2020. Welsh fans aren't allowed to travel to the Netherlands due to COVID restrictions, but it's an exciting time for those already there. Here's Howell Griffith.
Their team motto is "Together Stronger." In this tournament, Welsh resilience has won them a place in the next round. But is it enough? The man who's led them this far thinks not.
Knowing the players, knowing myself, knowing the staff, we want more. We're greedy. We want to continue this journey. We're loving it. We've been away from home a long, long time, and for the sacrifices the staff and all the boys have made, we want to make it worthwhile. So we want to continue this journey now.
Pubs and bars up and down Wales are preparing for thousands of socially distant supporters. Many of them frustrated fans told not to travel to the Netherlands because of the pandemic. That leaves a lucky few already in the EU, like these teachers from The Hague's International School. They feel a sense of duty to be the bricks in a diminished red wall.
I heard the call. I feel like I have to be there with my red shirt on, flag, or whatever else I can bring, making as much noise as possible.
We'll be in few in numbers, but we'll be loud and we'll be behind the boys to the end, and I think, we'll do them proud and we'll do the people at home proud.
We have got a chance. I think it's going to be a tight game. They're very similar to us. I hope we're going to nick it 1-0, but I have this horrible pit in the bottom of my stomach that says we're going to go to penalties, and I'm not sure I'm emotionally ready for that.
Wales's opponents are already on an emotional roller coaster, witnessing their teammate Christian Eriksen collapse, then qualifying after 2 losses. Many neutrals may want a Danish fairy tale victory. But there are other storylines at play. Kasper Schmeichel of Leicester and Denmark will face his deputy, Danny Ward of Leicester and Wales. A tale of 2 club keepers vying to be number 1. So how do Wales win it?
It's knockout football now. Denmark and Wales, well, you wouldn't say there's a lot between them. So I think Wales have come out a lot more attack-minded, as we've seen in the Turkey game. Everybody knows, if Bale's on song, Rambo's on song, then Wales tend to do well.
Confidence doesn't come naturally to most Welsh football supporters. Decades of disappointment have stifled any sense of entitlement. But this team has a very real chance of continuing their European journey. A win will send them back to Baku for a place in the quarter-finals. Howell Griffith, BBC News, Amsterdam.
In the past few minutes, the 4-time Olympic gold medalist Mo Farah has just failed in his attempt to qualify for the Tokyo Games next month. A special race was put on for him at the British Athletics Championships this evening in Manchester. And our correspondent Laura Scott is there for us tonight. Hi there, Laura.
Yes, Clive, this race wasn't actually meant to be taking place at the British Championships, but it was hastily arranged when Mo Farah failed to make the qualifying time at the official Olympic trial a few weeks ago in Birmingham. He missed out there by 22 seconds, and it was largely put down to an ankle injury. Now, we thought he'd recovered from that, and it appeared that they were confident he would make the time tonight. But in difficult conditions here in Manchester, it was an incredibly tense atmosphere inside the arena.
There is Mo Farah.
One last chance to make the plane to Tokyo 2020. And Mo Farah's task was clear: run the 10,000 metres inside 27 minutes and 28 seconds and he'd qualify. Flanked by pacemakers on the start line, the four-time Olympic champion had no shortage of motivation. Farah's the reigning 10,000 metre champion, a title he won in thrilling style 5 years ago in Rio. But the last few years haven't been easy. Having retired from the track in 2017, Farah switched to the marathon, but after limited success returned to the track in 2019. He's also split with his long-term coach Alberto Salazar, who was banned for doping violations. Farah's never been accused of any wrongdoing himself, and at 38 is adamant he can still go toe-to-toe with the world's best.
But the reigning Olympic champion here, Mo Farah, comes home well outside the qualifying time needed.
But his performance on the track suggested otherwise, missing the Olympic qualifying time. The clock no longer on his side. So he missed out by 19 seconds tonight, and his team were absolutely devastated by that. Mo Farah too. He said it was a really tough race. He was trying to push in difficult conditions tonight. But where does this leave him? Well, he declined to answer the question of whether this was the last time we will see him on the track. One thing's for certain, he will not be in Tokyo to defend his 10,000 metre crown.
All right, Laura Scott in Manchester. Thanks, Laura. And that's it. Now on BBC One, time for the news where you are. Have a very good night.